Hey everyone, and welcome to another Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to jump into today's topic with you all. Our goal today, we are completely demystifying AI workflow automation, and we're going to build it from the ground up. No confusing industry jargon, no getting lost in the weeds. We are absolutely not talking about neural network layers, complex data parsing, or API endpoints today. Nope. We want to build a solid, working understanding that you can actually use to build a wholesome 7-minute foundation of exactly how these systems operate.
So, right off the bat, we've got to address the elephant in the room. When most people hear the phrase AI automation, they instantly jump to one of two massive extremes. They think, okay, either it's pure magic that's going to replace all human workers literally overnight, or it's just another empty corporate buzzword that'll fade away in a year. But the reality? It's far more fascinating than either of those. AI automation isn't really about just doing the exact same tasks faster. It actually changes the entire shape of our work. It fundamentally shifts what we spend our time doing, pulling us out of those grueling trenches of data entry and moving us into the much more valuable role of data review. To guide us through this, we're anchoring our explainer today in some truly fantastic source material from Yarra's crash course on AI automation. We're going to use this to build a really simple, highly usable mental model together. My promise is that you'll walk away from this not just recognizing the buzzwords, but actually being able to evaluate these systems for yourself. Zero guesswork required. All right, let's get into Section 1, the foundation of automation. Okay, so let's set our groundwork. Before we can even touch the AI part of the equation, we absolutely have to understand the bedrock of basic automation. Here's our baseline definition. Automation is simply work carried out by a system once conditions are clear, without a person sitting there deciding every single step in real time. It relies entirely on predictable, repeatable patterns. Think about a thermostat in your house, right? It doesn't actually understand what cold feels like. It just does something useful. It checks a condition against a target, and it acts. If the room is too cold, boom, it turns the heat on. If it's warm enough, it turns it off. And that one critical part, doing it without a human having to make a real-time decision, is exactly what allows these systems to scale up to handle thousands of actions a minute. So every single automated system out there basically shares this exact same skeleton, guided by strict rules. First, you have an input. A signal arrives, kind of like a doorbell ringing. Second, the decision logic. The system checks what that signal means. Third, an action. A response is produced, like turning on a faucet. And finally, exception handling. This is where unusual cases get flagged for a human to review. It is exactly like a traffic light following timing logic to keep cars moving. That traffic light doesn't invent new behavior every time a different car rolls up. It just predictably, flawlessly follows its structure. Now, I really want to pause here for a second, because I want the gravity of this irreducible truth to sink in. Automation reduces attention, not responsibility. When a task gets automated, human judgment doesn't just poof disappear. It shifts. It shifts from manually executing the same task over and over to carefully designing, supervising, and correcting the system itself. Why? Because if you set the rules wrong, the system will just flawlessly repeat your mistake at a massive scale. Let's say you set a rule to automatically issue a full refund for every single angry email you receive. The system won't question it. It will cheerfully bankrupt your entire company in a single afternoon. But here is where the plot thickens. The real world, it's incredibly messy. Traditional rule-based automation is amazing when the world is perfectly tidy, but it shatters the second it encounters ambiguity. Think about a badly damaged shipping label, or a poorly scanned document, where half the text is cut off, or an angry customer using highly unusual, sarcastic language in a support ticket. Strict if-then rules, they just can't cope with that kind of messiness. Which brings us nicely to Section 2, Enter AI, handling the mess. Let's talk about how AI actually enters the picture here. It doesn't step in as this magical human replacement. Instead, it's a very specific tool designed to handle that fuzzy, unstructured information that refuses to fit into those neat little if-then boxes. And there's a brilliant way to illustrate this difference. Rule-based automation is basically a locked gate. Only exact, perfectly cut keys are ever going to work. AI automation, on the other hand, is like a trained security guard. The guard recognizes patterns and makes a qualified call based on what they see. So instead of demanding absolute, exact certainty before acting, AI uses probabilistic guessing. It basically estimates what a totally messy situation actually means. When we map this evolution out, there is a super clear progression. We start with manual work that relies on pure human judgment. It's incredibly flexible, but wow, is it slow and expensive. Then we move to rule-based automation, which uses exact if-then logic. That is perfectly reliable, but as we just saw, it breaks the second things get ambiguous. And finally, we arrive at AI-enabled automation. It uses pattern recognition to handle all those messy inputs. But look closely at the trade-off here. It can be wrong or inconsistent. It doesn't produce absolute mathematical certainty. It produces a highly confident guess.
Let's move on to section 3, the cost of interpretation.
Okay, so if it's just producing a confident guess, you might be wondering, why on earth is it so incredibly valuable to modern businesses? Well, that brings us to the core value proposition of AI in the workplace. And it focuses on one massive, invisible bottleneck. The crucial point is this mantra: AI reduces the cost of interpretation. You see, a huge chunk of our work isn't hard because the physical action, like typing or clicking, is hard. It's hard and it's time-consuming because our brains first have to interpret what is actually going on. If you have to read every single message, figure out the context, decide what it means, and then act, well, that interpretive step consumes a massive amount of your day. AI drastically slashes that cost. Think of a really seasoned librarian who can instantly recognize exactly which shelf a weird, obscure book belongs on. AI acts as that incredibly fast interpreter for our common, unstructured business tasks. Instead of you spending 20 minutes reading through a dense 50-page contract just to find one tiny termination clause, AI extracts that crucial data instantly. It's not taking over the whole workflow, but it sorts those messy emails. It summarizes those massive unread documents. It extracts data, classifies what a customer is actually mad about, drafts initial responses, and flags weird anomalies. It does the heavy lifting of interpretation right up front.
But, and this is a very, very important but, we have to clarify a vital limit here. AI does not erase uncertainty. Because it works on probabilities and patterns, sure, it can make highly confident operational guesses, but it isn't perfect. Sometimes it is confidently spectacularly wrong. And that is exactly why it still absolutely requires a human safety net for those high-stakes or low-confidence calls. AI isn't a replacement for structure. It's simply a way to extend your existing structure into much messier territory.
All right, let's bring it all home with section 4, designing the modern workflow.
Let's synthesize all these concepts and give you a brand new lens for evaluating your own job. When we put the pieces together, we get the blueprint for the ultimate modern workflow. Step 1, AI acts as the front line, interpreting that messy, unstructured input. Step 2, traditional automation takes that clean interpretation and perfectly executes the likely next step based on your established rules. Step 3, humans step in to handle the weird exceptions, the low-confidence guesses, and the complex, nuanced judgments. Honestly, this is such an empowering message. Instead of being bogged down in the digital trenches, acting as the exhausted first reader of every single mundane email or ticket, you get elevated. You become the strategic supervisor of a dynamic flowing system, applying your unique human judgment exactly where it adds the most value.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought for you to carry forward today. Take a good look at your own day and ask yourself, what part of your work is really just costly interpretation that could be safely moved into a system, and what requires the true, nuanced judgment that absolutely must stay with a human? By stepping into the role of a systems designer, you can start evaluating your own workflow with absolute clarity, leaving all the hype completely behind. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. And hey, keep asking those great questions.